Hello, my name is Ramona McKee with QuickToStitch.com.
What's up? It's Jeremy Picker from Amber Creative.
And you are listening to the Two Regular Guys podcast.
Hosted by Terry Combs RG, Regular Guy, and Aaron Montgomery.
The place to be for industry news.
The best dad jokes on earth, along with relevant topics to apparel decorators.
Prepare for the wild.
All right, welcome into the show. It is Friday, July 19th, 2024. I'm Terry Combs, and you can find me at terrycombs.com.
And I'm Aaron Montgomery, and you can find me at oursuccessgroup.com. And my mission is to inspire you to build a business that you love. And so if you're an embroiderer, today is your day. We are excited to not only have Erich behind the scenes running the show like he normally does, but we've asked him to, okay, now you're also the guest this week, but you still have to push the buttons. So he's amazingly talented, and we're excited to have him turn on his camera and talking about embroidery and really what embroiderers should consider when they want to start digitizing their own designs. So it's going to be a great conversation today, Terry. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that our guest, you know, it's like, oh, and by the way, you also have to work. You can't just talk.
I wonder if we should try that with some of our other guests and see how that goes. I think
so. I think
so.
Yeah. Here's a little video on how to run the board. If you,
yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, make sure you stay until the very end and get your helping of the secret sauce. Our good friend Dane Clement, the Two Regular Guys official art guy, is back to show us an alternative to Adobe Photoshop. This will be interesting. It's called Affinity Photo, and he's going to give us a little bit of information about that.
Yeah, he said that he might even show a little side by side. He's going to be coming in hot today, super busy over there at Stalls, and so we appreciate him spending some time to share a little secret sauce with us at the end of the show here today. But Terry, we have our news guest with us here, and I don't know, for some reason I feel like it's been a long time since I've seen Adrienne. I know she's recorded some. I know I've been gone, so it's probably me, but I'm excited to welcome Adrienne from dtfprinting.com back in here to do the news today. Terry, are you ready to dive into that?
I'm ready, Adrienne. Oh yeah.
I'm so happy to be back in person, live. Thanks, guys. Oh yeah, of course. All right, here is the news for this week. Up first, Inktavo has announced the acquisition of Clarity Software, a management information system software vendor specializing in job pricing, inventory management, and production management for the sign and graphics industry and other markets. Clarity Software brings MIS expertise and a wide range of features to Inktavo's software suite, including configure, price, quote tools, proof of delivery apps, and bi-directional links to customers' preferred accounting software. According to Inktavo, the acquisition of Clarity Software underscores its continued commitment to providing business owners with software solutions tailored to industries like signage, graphics, decorated apparel, and promotional products that allow them to scale, grow, and boost profits. Up next, Delta Apparel has officially notified the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission that it will be closing DTG To Go, a worldwide on-demand direct-to-garment apparel printing and fulfillment network. Delta ceased all production operations related to DTG To Go. That's a hard one to say. DTG To Go last month. Delta Apparel has also announced that it received notification from the New York Stock Exchange regulation that it has initiated proceedings to delist the company's common stock from the New York Stock Exchange American. Trading of the company's common stock has been suspended effective July 1st, and the company does not intend to appeal. And last, some DTF printing news. We are hosting our semi-annual DTF printing t-shirt contest. This is your chance to demonstrate your direct-to-film printing knowledge and expertise. So if you're interested in competing, you need to sign up for the contest no later than next Friday, July 26th. Participants will receive a blank UX print t-shirt and a downloadable file with the design. Printed t-shirts must be received by Monday, August 26th. The winner will be announced on the show floor at Printing United Expo in Las Vegas. And the winner will receive a $500 gift card to DTF Superstore, a trophy, a digital badge, and of course, some bragging rights. Thank you to our sponsors, iGroup Technologies and DTF Superstore. So you have 1 week to sign up. So make sure you do that today. And for more industry news and events, head to dtfprinting.com. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so when Inksoft and Printavo went together, they became Inktavo. Now they're adding clarity. So will it be Inktavoity or?
We'll see. We'll see. That's the breaking story. Well, I'm sure,
Aaron, as you might recall on this show, I jokingly said, "What are they going to call it, Inktavo?" And you're like, "Yeah, that is what."
Yeah, that's actually true. That is actually what
maybe
they call
I
it.
shouldn't joke about it. Because it's
Nice.
probably
All right. Well, make sure you guys get over to dtfprinting.com. Adrian's doing a fantastic job over there, just keeping us apprised. They've got a wonderful industry news section and just good work going on. So we're so grateful for what Adrian does for the industry there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see who's checked in here, who's tuned in bright and early here today. We've got. Sorry, I'm hitting buttons, Eric. I don't know what happened to me. So I'm hands free now. Sorry, but good morning, Michelle. Thank you for being here and tuning in. And Eric shared a whole bunch of great links and stuff like that, so you can check all that out for sure. But Terry, another, in fact, you hear it in the intro, right? You want a dad joke, you come to the two regular guys. So shall we?
And you're bringing the dad today.
Well, before we get to it, sorry, Eric, before we get to it, this is, remember when I was traveling and my friend had that book of dad jokes and this is another one from that book. So I can't take credit.
Your friend had that book. Does that mean that now you have it?
There was a thought, but it was given to him by his youngest daughter, and I was like, okay, that would be a little too much to steal that from him. So I just wrote down a whole bunch of them. So here we go. Hey Terry, do you know why tennis players are so bad at relationships?
No, Aaron, I don't know.
Because love means nothing to them.
That's pretty good.
There's a lot of so for those that didn't get the joke, if we have to explain it, well, that was actually what makes it a dad joke. So if you don't play tennis, when the score is 0-0, it's love. Okay, there you go. So
and an odd assortment of points scored.
Exactly. Yeah. How does the first point equal 30 and then the next one's worth 15, I guess. And yeah, anyhow. All right,
Aaron, before we dive in, we want to thank everybody for checking out the Two Regular Guys podcast. We still need your voices. We would love to have the regulators participate in the show intros that you heard at the top of the show. Yep. Go to decorators.ink./intro, read a few sentences and be a part of the show. And we are always looking for new guests. So if you or anyone you know would like to join us, go to calendly.com/2 regular guys to book a future episode or email us at info@tworegularguys.com with your show ideas. If you are listening to the podcast version of the show, we would appreciate you sharing the Two Regular Guys podcast with all of your industry friends so they can become regulators too. And we would appreciate you giving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, YouTube Podcast, wherever you do your podcast listening, we are there. And if you're watching live right now, please join in with your comments and your questions for our show producer, Eric.
Yeah, indeed. Make sure that, you guys are out there sharing. We want to get everybody in here to get this valuable information. We got a few more people checking in here before we bring Erich in. We got Worldwide Stuff saying hello there. And Doug says, Ron, that'd be me. What is your Philly date in August? I don't have a Philly date. I just got back from Philadelphia like 2 weeks ago.
You're $1 short there, buddy.
Yeah. I can't. When am I going to be on the West Coast or the East Coast again? I don't know. We'll figure it out, Doug. We need to get together for sure because I'm moving to the U.S. Virgin Islands with you. So my wife already started looking for jobs. All right, Cindy, good morning, and appreciate you checking in with us. Jesse, hello to everybody. So thank you. All right, Terry, are we ready to bring Erich in here?
I think it's kind of up to Erich whether he brings him something or not.
Yeah, good point.
I don't know. I don't know if I feel like coming in or not.
He is
I
ready.
don't know if I'm up to it today. I might just turn myself back on.
And then you want us to answer these questions about digitizing for you, Erich? That would go well.
I mean, you could try.
It's funny that you say that because just this morning I was thinking this is probably the one show where we just can't fake it.
Probably not. At the same time, this is often the joke. Like if I'm really busy with something, sometimes my wife will be like, "What can I do to help?" And she's like, and I'm like, "Well, I'm writing an article about digitizing." She's like, "I'll write that." And I'm like, "No, you won't." Cool. You don't need to.
Would it help if I got you a glass of water?
That's okay. You don't have to do that.
All right. Well, I know we're saying that, we couldn't fake it, but I mean, I do have 15 whole minutes of actual embroidery experience on a machine.
True.
I mean, which is 15 more than Terry, I believe.
It is.
As far as I know, yeah. I think poor Terry is going to just have to read questions and listen today.
Yeah.
My experience is being in a trade show booth across the aisle from an embroidery company.
Chattering.
Sounds about right.
All right.
And my knowledge is, man, that's loud.
Yeah. I'll give you that. From my upper range loss of hearing would agree with you on that one.
All right. Well, jokes aside, yes, I've done no digitizing. But I guess the best place to start with anything that you're trying to explain or understand is just a definition of it, right? Define what digitizing is. And I'm sure many of our listeners, especially the embroidery folks that are tuned in, do know what it is. But
of course,
I know you, Erich, you probably, there's probably a point in this definition here. So give us the definition.
Yes. There is a point to be made here with defining digitizing, because a lot of the time people want to come across with the concept of conversion. And I mean, the whole topic today was for those about to digitize. And by the way, if any of you have sudden AC/DC flashbacks in your head when you hear that, fully intentional, we salute you. That's part of that. But when people first start out, they think of this as converting. They think, okay, I'm going to bring a JPEG or a PNG file or vector, SVG, AI, whatever. I'm going to bring that in and I'm going to click a button and I'm going to convert it. And that's how it's going to go. Or I'm going to do a couple processes and convert this art that I already have for flat art for digital for print. And it's going to be embroidery. And that's really not the case at all. Embroidery is interpretive. Here's my big thing. It's about interpreting art into a file that drives the motions of the machine. Why do I say all of that instead of just saying, yeah, we're drawing shapes and filling them with stitches? The thing is, there's a bunch of stuff that we have to do to the art to make it embroidered correctly because of the natural distortion of the process. And there's a bunch of artistic stuff we do that isn't really shown to us in the art. If we're making gradients or shading or anything else with embroidery, we have to think in thread to do that. And we have to use the limitations of thread. It's kind of like drawing with a ballpoint pen. You have a single fixed line width of color, and you have to use that to make any sort of shading or gradients or anything else you're trying to do. So it's really interpretive. And also because of size constraints and the physical constraints of embroidery, things like really small details, things like really small text may have to be altered in order to fit the needs of the garment or where they want to put the design. So when I say digitizing, I want people to really think of this as an interpretation of the original art. And the reason I mentioned the machine, I'm like, oh, this is about driving the pantograph, which is the hoop and the big, when the hoop's moving, and yes, the garment moves, not the head. That's the other thing people wonder about. How can I put my fingers in the hoop, which you shouldn't do? Don't do it. Modern machines won't let you.
I knew that part.
but I do that. When I do that, they're like, how can you do that without getting nailed? And I'm like, well, because the garment's moving, not the head. And as long as I don't put my finger underneath where the needle is, it's not going to happen. I'm fine. But it's not a good idea. The thing is, that big pantograph is moving. We're talking about whether or not the needle is up or down. There's a couple other things we can control, but it's about knowing what's going on the machine. And we shouldn't forget that digitizing is like a CAD CAM process. We're doing something to control a machine. We're making a program that makes a machine move. And I think knowing those machine movements and remembering kind of the physicality of this thing is important to getting it right. It's one of the most frustrating things people have is just not realizing that we're not printing on a flat surface. And I know, don't get me wrong, I know printing has all this because I know about as much about off contact as probably Terry does about digitizing. So I know that there's lots that goes into printing. I don't want to like minimize printing, but I'll say for my time doing sublimation, once my art was dialed in, there wasn't a lot of wobble that's going on in the printer. Like by the time I'm on the machine, I'm pretty well done as long as the machine is just in operation. Whereas there's a lot of fuzzy logic that has to be put in to understand how stitches are going to shrink in the angle of the stitch, how they're going to expand against that angle, how material moves when you jam a needle through it tens of thousands of times. And so the concept of knowing what that physicality is and understanding that we're going to draw different shapes than what we need for the art we would use for printing or for vinyl cutting or anything else is part of that definition. So interpretation and then understanding that we are working on a machine and that machine's moving and we should know how that machine works.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, so, I mean, if I were starting to embroider right now today, I would probably job out the digitizing, and to cut out that variable to start with. But do you think people really need to digitize for themselves? Or are there, is there a good reason to bring it in-house?
There are good reasons. I'm going to say this for those people who think you have to digitize to be an embroiderer, very much you do not. There are tons of digitizers out there. In fact, the one thing you find out as an embroiderer is, unfortunately, there are so many digitizers out there that your inbox is constantly full and your phone is constantly ringing off the hook because generally overseas digitizers will be calling you and bothering you constantly trying to get your work because there's such a wealth of digitizers out there, not all of the same caliber. But the thing is, you don't have to digitize for yourself to do embroidery. You can absolutely job it out. In a world where we're seeing more people bringing in transfers for heat press and bringing other things in, I don't see why we can't see that also, of course, in embroidery. The thing is, there are good reasons, but I'll tell you the one good reason that is not good enough. Though, if you are already jobbing this stuff out and you're like, I'm tired of paying a guy, between $5 and $30 for a job to get this thing done, unless it's names, and you should always do names in-house. That's an easier thing to learn. That is not a good enough reason because the amount of opportunity cost that it takes to take one of your staff who then has to be artistic, have enough free time, and have the desire to push around tiny points on screen to make things work. If you don't have somebody who's in that kind of category already, or you're not that kind of person, you don't love that as part of the job, taking it on to save a few bucks per job is an absolute loss. It's very hard to explain to people that that's just not the best idea. However, if you want to do really creative execution, I actually have examples, and I'm going to grab some stuff. Sometimes people will think creative execution is big crazy stuff, and I'm like, no, I've got this big piece from Mark's Crane that I show a lot of times when I'm teaching. It's kind of fuzzing out from my green screen a little bit. That's not what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's little stuff. Like we have this little tiny guy here, and he's got little pixels, and you'll see it's pixel art, and every angle of the stitches, it's kind of hard to get focused on camera. You'll see the light changing on that. If I show somebody that really simple art, a digitizer might not know that you want that weird texture. And if you decide your niche is video game art and you can't find a digitizer to work with who will do that, maybe you do that for yourself. Or if you have something very, very specific to your technical process, like I'm going to do curtains and beds and bedspreads, and I have a big sash frame embroidery machine, which is where you take a multi-head embroidery machine. It has a big perimeter sash, a giant hoop that you hoop in together, and you embroider across that whole span. It repeats. That's something that not every digitizer knows how to do off the bat. They usually can learn that stuff, even if they're not trained to do that. But it's something where you might want to do that yourself because you have this very technical process, or you're doing upholstery or something that's not common. Those are good reasons. So creative execution, if you want to do something that's uncommon, that's not like the rest of the stuff that's out there, you might want to do some of that in-house. If you have those technical needs, something that's not common as far as the execution, you're doing a weird kind of applique process, you're doing a weird kind of decoration process, stuff like that. It's something that might be interesting to you to do it that way in-house. You can control it and use that particular equipment that you have. Or you have incredibly fast turnarounds. One of the other things that my shop got kind of known for, we were working for movies and TV. I won't just hammer on the fact of all the shows I worked on. My favorite one to talk about is probably Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. Those are the ones people know, and it's very Albuquerque focused. And being an Albuquerque, New Mexico native, I always talk about them. But one of the reasons they did that is they could come to us and they'd have rough art in the morning and fully embroidered pieces by evening. And that is something that is really hard to do unless you have somebody absolutely on hand, ready to do that stuff in the shop. The thing is, all of these things with the right outsourced digitizer are still possible to happen. You know, if you have the right outsourced digitizer, you can develop a relationship who has artistic execution, and you can show them good examples of what you want. And especially when we get down to the fact that you might need extreme changes or to do stuff really fast, that can be harder. But what I'll say this is those things are all possible, but you really have to know what you want. And no matter what you're doing, whether you outsource or bring stuff in fact, I think even, especially if we're talking about outsourcing, even if you outsource, I think it is really important in an embroidery shop, a professional embroidery shop, to have your own digitizing software anyway. I think it is very useful to have. Small changes can be made. You can do simple stuff on your own. It might also be that you can take on very simple jobs and do those yourself, even if you're going to outsource anything that's difficult. And you never know. You just never know when you might have to take back control. I don't see having all this machinery around and not being able to control it myself at all. Without digitizing software, you're not going to be able to make anything of your own, aside from, let's say, lettering software, which is the absolute basis. You must have lettering software so you can compose and put lettering on stuff. But I still think you should have digitizing software. And honestly, learning what digitizing is about and how it works is still important for outsourcing, because that is how you communicate with digitizers.
Yeah.
How much easier is it to get what you want or to fix a problem if you say, all right, I'm looking at this design here, and for whatever reason on this one side, it's not clicking, it doesn't look quite right. And if you understand that there's pull distortion where, let's say we have a satin stitch column. If we have a column of satin stitches, they all are horizontal, they're always going to get narrower. If you know that pull distortion and that you need pull compensation because your outlines aren't hitting, if you know what that is, and you tell the digitizer that fix is going to come back a lot faster than if you don't know how digitizing works at all. If you come and just grab a file, throw it on your machine, you don't know how embroidery works or how digitizing works, it is not necessarily something that is easy to explain aside from just showing pictures. Most digitizers should be able to get it from a picture if something's going wrong. But if you can explain what you want, also on the lead end, when you're first putting your art in, if you can explain things you want, you know how embroidery works, you're going to have a better chance of it.
Okay. Well, let's get some of the comments from the regulators here. Mike said
Absolutely.
earlier, digitizing has the highest disparity between importance to the process and understanding by the customer. Its value is severely underestimated by most clients. Thoughts on that?
One of the other important things about that definition I gave you guys earlier, it's good to define to a customer what digitizing actually is. If they want to see a little bit of it, let them see it. I think it's fine, because I think once they see it, they understand more about what it is. Not every customer wants that. Lots of customers just want you to be the black box that money comes in and stuff comes out. There are customers like that. If you have the ones who are willing to get educated, absolutely worthwhile to teach them a little bit, at least to understand that this is not feeding this into some software and clicking a button.
Yeah. And Justin, kind of reiterating what you had said there, Eric, I'm always teaching that even if you don't want to digitize yourself, it's always important to learn the process so you can talk to your digitizer and know the terms and technical aspects.
100%. And go to a class that Justin is hosting, go to a class that I'm hosting. One of the beginning digitizing classes at any of the trade shows is going to be worth your while, even if you never push a point yourself, even if you never digitize a stitch. Absolutely worthwhile to understand what's going on. Just like anything else, I think anytime you're working without outsourcing of any kind, knowing a little bit about the process. I even talk to people who do promotional products and tell them that. I'm like, rather than just keep going like, oh, well, it doesn't look this way enough, it doesn't look bold enough, but what they actually mean is more coverage. If you don't know the word, You're going to say bold, and they're going to make things thicker. You know what I mean? You have to be able to speak the language that the people are speaking in order to get the process quickly and correctly.
Yeah. You know, I have people come to my screen printing classes that tell me I don't ever intend to pull a squeegee, but I want to understand it so that, well, basically, so those employees at the company that I just bought are telling me the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a little off, well, not off subject, but Jeremy Picker said, I've been trying to get customers to go with that 8-bit embroidery for years, and no one will not give up until I get someone to do it. So stay strong, Jeremy.
It had a very narrow window of popularity. What's funny is in my videos, it's one of the more popular videos I've released is showing this. At the same time, I've seen so few examples. It was literally in the retro gaming space, the people who love the Nintendo and the 8-bit systems. Yeah. Also, the problem is once you start getting into like 16-bit art, it gets to be where those squares are so small that it's really not tenable. It doesn't work really well on a hat. Yeah. So yeah, it's a real narrow focus on that stuff.
Yeah. I know there's still kids out there playing Minecraft, so yeah.
There's plenty. And honestly, I've taught people the same techniques from that are also really useful for making really small QR codes. Yeah. So I taught people that same technique of how to control the size and shape of a square. To get that same kind of, activity going. But yeah, I think, all in all, embroidery, one of embroidery's biggest strengths is texture. And so, and I know we'll get into this a little bit later, though I'll have to speed myself up here. I know I'm looking at the time going, wow, I went too far on that. If we don't think of the thread and the medium, you lose so much of what makes embroidery cool. I mean, there's so much you can do with texture and dimension that if you don't think about that, if you just think about it as a flat thing sitting on top of your substrate, you just lose so much of the cool out of embroidery. So I think thinking about texture and stitch angles and the way light plays across it is critical to be a great digitizer if you can.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at the outline going, what do we got? 3 shows here?
I'll try and keep them fast.
I was looking at who the guest was and thought, are we going to have 3 shows?
Yeah, for real.
All right. Well, let's keep moving then. I love a good automation. I love AI, right? So as somebody that loves that kind of thing, why is there not just I push a button and go? Is that a thing? Is there a tool that a digitizer can use? Talk to us about that.
To be quite honest with you, everybody would like it to be a thing. And this is where I'm controversial, where despite the fact that many of the largest producers in the world of embroidery software offer auto digitizing, I don't use it. And I really wouldn't use it in production. Now, this does not mean that it can't be used for certain designs. The problem is that it's too hit or miss. And if you only trust that and you don't develop any skills and you don't understand how embroidery looks or works, it's really hard to make that useful. Yeah. So the problem being, and I'm going to say this without naming names, within the last week, I saw somebody showed me this thing and said, oh, there's this cool service that's going to do embroidery this certain way and it's all automatic. And they showed it to me and I went to go check out the service. And when I saw their sample files, there was a letter where the stitches were going the absolute wrong direction, which would absolutely pucker the garment and look terrible. And on some machines, it wouldn't even stitch a stitch that long. And that was chosen by the automatic processes that decide how to place stitches inside of a piece of art. And they put that up as one of their 5 samples of their best example of how their automated system works. I'm not saying it doesn't have a place. Very simple artwork. It can work to a degree. If you don't know how embroidery works, if you aren't using digitizing software yourself, especially a service like that where somebody is handing back to you an automated piece, the likelihood of having results that I, as a professional, would consider completely untenable. I would not use these with a customer. They are not good enough for me to put out the door. That happens more often than I would like it to. Does it get better? Yes. Is there a possibility? Yes. I'm hoping that somebody, it isn't me yet, is out there working on the real AI version of this, but it's a really complicated problem. And for right now, the problem we have with auto digitizing, you can only see the lines that are there. And a lot of the time when you're working with art and digitizing, you're actually envisioning what has to be there for the embroidery, and it's not present in the art. There's no line to break it up. There's no color change to show where you draw the right elements to make your embroidery look the way it needs to look and to work technically. Because of that, the automated systems can't really do what a digitizer can do yet. Is there room in the future? Yeah. Right now, if I were starting a business and going, I'm going to hang my entire business on the thought that I'm going to push button embroidery my way through this thing, I wouldn't do that if I wanted to be known for quality, for sure. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, so this software, the problem is it doesn't learn, right? It's going to continue to do it wrong.
It has the software that's out there right now, though it is very complex, and I am not a coder, so I'm not insulting people's code. It has a fairly simple understanding of if a item is so wide on the embroidery field, then it's this kind of stitch. If it gets this larger, then it's this kind of stitch. And it follows angles as best it can around quarters and things to make it look right for satin stitches, but it doesn't always get that right. And it doesn't always break things up the way that someone who's thinking about the shapes would do. And so you end up with this kind of automated system, and the same places that sometimes cause digitizers to panic if they don't know where they're going to break things up, where you have to imagine something that's there that's not in your art. Those same situations can cause these automated systems to fail. Yeah. Or at least to produce something that's not the best.
Yeah. Okay. Real quick, Chuck was talking about Mike's comment earlier. Just in generally, Chuck said that's good for all types of decorating. Most people don't understand the value they see at the end, not the work, right? And so, and that's our responsibility as business owners, is to educate people, educate our customers on and change their perception of the value and understand what goes into it. So.
Well, and that's the thing that I love about those kind of process videos people do. If you're doing social media videos or advertisement, showing process, including showing somebody drawing on a digitizing system, so you see some of that, you see the cloud of points and the 100+ objects that go together to make your stupid left chest, with the plumber running away for Gary's Plumbing. Like that same thing, showing that a little bit helps, right? It helps for people to understand.
Yeah.
Well, so you were talking about needing to do really creative execution, special techniques, and when you were doing the Breaking Bad stuff, super fast turnaround. What's the best way to get started as far as somebody learning to digitize? Just watch a 10-minute YouTube video. Will that do it?
Here's the thing. I always, it's hard for me to just be like, oh man, YouTube University again. Hey, we are YouTube University. We're on YouTube right now. I'm streaming on Twitch. At the same time, what I'm going to say is that you're not going to get it probably in 10 minutes. Back in the day, they used to say you couldn't be good for a couple of years. I was in full production about 3 months, and that was wild at the time. People do get better. People are more technical now. But the funny thing is, the stumbling blocks, and we're talking about this maybe a little bit in a second, they really center around the same problem, is that people really haven't kind of consumed enough embroidery. What I think made me able to get underway as fast as I did was watching a lot of embroidery run. That was the best thing I did. Now, I'm not saying don't go to classes. I'm teaching the classes. Obviously, I want you to go to classes. The people who are there teaching you can get you there so much faster, because we're going to go ahead and say, all right, here are the places where I rammed my head into the brick wall until it went through. Let's just give you the door. Let's walk you over to the door instead of you do it like that. Yeah. You don't need to do this. You don't need to lose all of your hair, smashing, like tearing it out and smashing it through the wall like I did. Let's go ahead and walk you through the door and give you the setting. So it's good to do the 10-minute YouTube class and the 1-hour YouTube class and the 5-hour YouTube class. These are all good things to do, because they're going to help you with things like technical terms, things like the basic, especially if you're listening to me, the basic knowledge of embroidery. Hey, Justin too, who's teaching here, and Ramona, who's often with us. We all teach these fundamentals of embroidery, so you understand like that a stitch under tension shrinks a little bit. Then when you stack a bunch of stitches together, they roll off each other and it moves around. That if you work toward yourself in the embroidery field, that you might pinch some material and cause some rippling. If we start to understand that's going to happen, and why it happens, and what the correlation is between what's happening on screen to what's happening on the machine, which, by the way, the screen's always lying to you and it does not show you what's happening on the machine. The only thing that matters is what happens on the machine. But the correlation between the two, if we can give you a little bit of that in the class situation, that's great. But then you need to watch embroidery designs run. So get embroidery designs from good digitizers and watch them run. And yes, I mean on a machine if you can, because one of the things is understanding what happens when you start driving that needle thousands of times through that fabric and you watch the fabric move around and shift and all the things that happen with it. And Also, just looking at embroidery, the number of times I see somebody go, man, I'm trying to digitize and my embroidery doesn't look like everybody else's. It doesn't look like the hat that I got when I went to the ball game. And I'm looking at it and going, all right, so none of your stitches are in the same direction, style, or shape as the ones from the ball game hat. Did that bother you at all? Or did you look at the one you were trying to emulate before you did it? Like, we can look at embroidery, and with the internet the way it is, with high resolution images of every product ever out there, just go look at a ton of embroidery and say, here's what maybe this logo looks like, and here's what some digitizer thought that the embroidery should look like, and how they broke up those shapes, those areas of color into the stitches. Even if I don't get you to run on a machine, which I really cannot stress enough, that running a machine yourself and watching stuff run, and I do mean not walking away to go get a coffee, but watching the machine run sometimes, will teach you, if I can't stress that enough. But the other half of that, for the artistic part of this, for the how do I interpret stuff into stitches part of this, is just to consume a lot of embroidery. Keep looking at it. There are all of these people who've been working on this for literal thousands of years, who have learned how to make a mark and blend color with thread. And those people have left for us the whole map. If we want to start there, certainly there's more that we can do. There's more that we can expand to. However, looking at that other embroidery is where a good place to start to get yourself underway, and watching somebody else's files run, both on the machine and also, if you guys don't know this, if you have any sort of digitizer or embroidery software, they will usually have something called a slow replay or a draw ribbon. There's a bunch of ways it can be called, where you can watch the design run on screen and how it builds. Embroidery is a sequence. It builds from the back to the front in layers. And watching how it's building over time is also really important to understanding how to make it both efficient and to work technically. Watching all that is how you get it. You got to consume embroidery and kind of breathe that in. It has to get into you that way. It's a little like osmosis. You got to kind of be around embroidery and see it, but you have to do it in a kind of analytic way and think, what direction are those stitches going? What kinds of stitches are being used? How long are those stitches? What order are they being laid down? And if you have a good design, runs well, watch that run on the intended fabric, and you're going to have an entire education just in that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's take a quick breather here. Let you catch your breath. I'll push the buttons even, Eric, and
okay.
we'll take a break, and we will come back. Worldwide Stuff has got a question in there that I think might be worth checking out. Eric, I started, so take a look, and if we want to cover that, we can do that as well. So here we go. So I want to share with you 3 mental states most business owners struggle to master. It's goal setting so that you believe it's possible. It's facing fears to be able to step outside of your comfort zone. And finally, taking action even when you're not sure what action to take. Now, 90% of the challenges business owners have faced have nothing to do with the nuts and bolts of running a business. It's not the accounting, the production, or even the marketing. It is the mindset. Now, as entrepreneurs, we need to cultivate a mindset that we were never taught in school. All right, just hit that link, osg.link/mindset, and you can see all of the rest of it. There's no catch, no gotchas or anything like that. You can go get all the information. It's just to take you right to a YouTube video and check it out and see what do you think about that business owner mindset. So, Eric, I mentioned we'd cover that question real quick here. If you want to pop that up there.
I'm going to do this real briefly.
Yeah.
Worldwide Stuff asks what kind of hoodie material GSM used for big block embroidery design, and kind of explains the design. Said, I had a lot of issues, realized might not be the material, but pull compensation. What I'm going to tell you ahead of time is, when I'm working on a job, this is not something I'm usually going to do. And just to be honest with you, in custom apparel, the apparel is going to be chosen by the customer, and the weight of the apparel and what kind of material they're going to use is going to be about what they want to wear and what makes sense for them. So I'm not probably going to go from that angle. What I will say is, you're saying you were having issues. It might not be the material, but pull compensation. Things to look at when you're dealing with hoodies. You do need more pull compensation to make outlines hit on a thicker hoodie. The thicker you get, the more distortion you're going to have. As designs sink, also remember that anything that has a knit with a vertical grain, vertical stitches may sink more, may go even further if they're directly vertical and they fall into that grain. So the things we want to look at as far as problems there, you definitely want to check out your stabilizer. Make sure the design is adequately stabilized. It sounded like a really big design with a lot of stitches. Stabilizer is going to be partially chosen by how much thread you're throwing at that thing. Certainly make sure you need all that coverage. It might be that your digitizer is throwing way too many stitches at that block, because sometimes you don't need insanely dense full coverage to get that done. And the more stitches you put in, the more distortion you're going to have. And certainly pull compensation. If you're having things like outlines falling apart and there's a measured visible gap, the edge of that stitching that goes into that border should just be pulled over by more than that gap. It's actually a fairly simple equation once you get into it, but it does change from different materials. If you go to super thick hoodie to a flat work shirt, those are going to run differently. So that can be the case there. Rather than kind of tell you what material to use, it really depends on what your customer wants out of this. I mean, I can't tell somebody's like, got a juice bar that they're working in the summer and want light hoodies. And I go, nah, your design's really heavy, so I'm going to put you guys in Carhartt. That's not really a thing I can do. So I'm going to say it really depends on what your goal is there, how you're going to adjust. Luckily, stabilizers can help, and certainly digitizing can help with that too. You're at this balance where you can adjust any one of those legs on the stool and get yourself to where you want.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what I love about Eric. That was a quick answer, by the way, folks. So
quick as I can. Yeah.
Very, very detailed, quick answer from Eric. I love it. All right. Well, Eric, let's talk about this here a little bit. And this is in all decorating forms, not just embroidery, but a lot of times when we're getting into something new, we can be a little bit frustrated with the results. Terry, I remember a story, and I think it was there, but I remember you telling the story of the person that bought the direct-to-garment machine and then called up because they ruined the shirt, their first shirt, and you kind of laughed, and they were like serious about it, and like, oh, you've never had a rag before? Okay, got you. So, but obviously, learning to digitize, and it can be a little bit frustrating. So, what are some of the most common stumbling blocks that a new digitizer might, what the bruise you have on your forehead, how can they?
Okay, super common stumbling blocks for brand new digitizers, especially if they come from other disciplines. What's on screen will not be reflected necessarily on the machine. Yes, they are similar, of course. You do want things to look okay on the screen, but I talked about how stitches get shorter and all that stuff. We currently don't have any software that's showing us what the produced version will look like differently, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on the machine that might change that. So you're going to have letters that look too thick, and lines that look too thick, and things that are adjusted for pull and push compensation on screen. So the screen is lying to you. You actually have to digitize for what will eventually happen to the design, meaning that you are going to have something that looks weird and letters are going to look uneven and all that stuff on screen. You just have to know what it's going to do and trust it until you get it to the machine to actually test it. So that's number one. Screen is lying to you. Number two, the other big common stumbling block is that people want to do the automatic digitizing and it doesn't work as well as they want to. And then they start reworking into it, and that causes them to waste a lot of time. They might be better served by learning to digitize and digitizing the shapes that they actually need from the get-go and not relying on the auto first. So that can be kind of difficult for people. Number three, just because something is a continuous area of color inside of a design doesn't mean it's one object inside of the design. You might have something broken up into several different objects of different stitch types, even though it's one continuous area of color, considering there are limits to the width of a column and what that can be as far as a satin or a fill stitch. There are limits to what stitches can, how short stitches can get, how small lines can curve, things like that. And so you really have to let those physical limits help you. And there's artistic things that you may choose to do where you break up a field of color into multiple shapes for artistic reasons or technical reasons. So one block of color doesn't mean one object in your embroidery. And especially with like borders and drop shadows and stuff, it causes a lot of trouble for people. And I would say probably those are probably the top stumbling blocks. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes beyond that. For me, I think a lot of it is just expecting the embroidery machine to be a printer. There's a bunch of distortion that happens in embroidery, and it has to be just understood and trusted. Once you get the process down, you will learn to digitize to overshoot things so that when they get to the machine, they're correct. But the first part of that is really just knowing that and trusting it, and not trusting the screen at all. Unfortunately, the thing that you're looking at is not there. The product of the digitizer is the embroidery, not the file.
Got it. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, anybody that's ever decorated a garment has had this experience. They go, "Well, that's not right." so, so how can I? And you know, you see this online all the time. People are giving you band-aids to fix a problem rather than figuring out where the problem actually started, where it occurred. So, how can a new digitizer tell if it's what they've done in the digitizing that's causing the problem, or maybe it's something else? Maybe it's the equipment. How can you figure out where the mistake was made?
I'll give you a couple of simple ones. Keep it as tight as we can. The thing is, the embroidery file is not going to change from run to run or from head to head. If you're having a problem, especially on a multi-head machine, it's only happening on one head or another head. The likelihood of that being the file is super low, because it should happen the same place and the same time reliably. So if it's a thread break, or if it's something that's going off where the outline's going off, as long as the garments are all hooped the same, you're using the same stabilizer, you haven't changed anything, from run to run and from head to head should be pretty similar. If it's always going wrong in the same spot, if it's always going wrong at the same time, that's more likely to be your digitizing stuff. Also, things like loops are tension type things that we can't control tension on in our digitizing software. If you're having looping or stuff like that, where it's quality stuff and it's also not related to any one particular area of the design, the chances are that is something that's going on in your tension, and honestly, check your bobbin and clean your bobbin out and replace your bobbin. So often it's a bobbin. That kind of stuff is not really going to be in the file at all.
Okay.
So unfortunately, it's like there are other things. The problem is, like when you're having outlines go off, people will say, well, I threw more stabilizer on it and it worked. Yeah, it can. You're just arresting the material from moving to the point where you're stitching through cardboard. Yeah, it might keep it from shifting, but you could have also fixed that in the digitizing. So people will do different things to fix stuff. It is still that balance. But really, the big thing that people get into is they think it's a digitizing problem, but it's not reliably happening at the same time, same place. And that means it's very likely to be something that's going on the machine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So we've got a couple comments in there. Anything that you feel like we need to bring in, Eric? Feel free. Let's do that real quick.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Mike's got something here. He was saying, so did you grab that too or no?
Yeah.
I think we both clicked that and it popped back off. All right.
Oh, yeah. So Mike's one there. There.
All right. Yeah. We're still doing it. And that distortion can change mid-project. I finished jobs with a different file than I started. Yeah, that can. And also, here's the other problem with that too. And sometimes it's a complete mystery. There are times where it can be. And here's the other thing that'll happen too. There can be differences with the garments, even in one run of garments. I've had issues where you just, okay, of course, if you're doing multiple different kinds of garments, it's all on the table. Things can happen with different types of material. Different types of material can do things you don't expect them to do. The one other stumbling block people have, funny enough, sewing on sublimated material leaves a white ghost or a halo around your design as it reveals the white thread underneath the sublimated surface. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, my bobbin's coming up. No, it's not. It's the sublimated material. But yeah, that can happen with multiple garments. And I've had within the same run of garments, like I'll be onto my next box of hoodies, pull them up, and there's something just subtly different about that box of hoodies. Or there's the other thing that can happen is you have something that has a lot of texture, and the angle of how that fabric is sewn in causes just a little bit of distortion in your small lettering or causes some needle deflection. Things can look a little different. You really have to judge it at the handshake distance. You need to be 3 feet away from stuff to really judge what it looks like from embroidery. And frankly, a lot of things can change it. And I'll say this, having done what you shouldn't do, which is having machines in the old shops I worked in where each machine wasn't in the same quality. I've had files just for individual machines because those machines didn't run quite right. Don't do that. Get your machines fixed. But sometimes, yeah, you have to work with that distortion as it goes.
All right.
Okay.
So Lisa has a question. Where can I find the beginner class?
For me, I don't think I've got anything on that is super beginner classes right now, but there are lots of beginner classes out there. I would say this, check with your whatever show you go to, look for the beginner track. They almost always say beginner, intermediate, or advanced. I'm always shocked that people don't look at what those are. Can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody with a glassy stare who is brand new, who's been in my advanced classes learning really high-end techniques. There are people doing beginner classes. The one thing is, I'm probably not going to say one or another. I have too many friends in this industry to tell you which one to go to. There are lots of them out there. Some people find it more helpful to do a class that's specific to their software because they want to see the controls. I'm going to tell you that an essential class that teaches you the origins of the thing and how it works is important. I've got one that's called Demystifying Digitizing that is out there that we teach. It is more of a beginner intermediate. It has a little bit more going on there. What I'm going to say is you are going to learn a lot from, and by the way, Aaron's got the link up there for that one, decorators.education/DNLD if you want to check out that class. But there are lots of beginner classes out there and ones that are also hosted by your software supplier. Lots of software suppliers are now putting out more classes as well. It depends on what's the thing that's you're lacking the most. Also, check out the Take Up. I've got many starting out shows. I do a show every Friday. I'm going to talk about it again in a second here. Those are all possible to watch. And like I said, there are people out there who are doing full beginner classes. The guys at Embroidery Nerd are doing some classes. I know that they've got a lot of compatriots out there. You go to impressionist shows, there's classes. And I know that we've got lots of people who are out there teaching. But what I'm going to say is it is a good idea to kind of get those basics in, look for those classes. And as Mike says, beginner classes are good for experienced people too. I need to get back to basics often. What I will say is, for my money, the best beginner classes are not project classes where they teach you to do one thing, even though those can be very useful to learn your software and what to do. I like the ones that teach you the basics and the elements that are essential.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
If anybody's wondering why I'm never trying to hit the buttons like these guys are fighting over the buttons, they only give me the read-only version of StreamYard. So.
There may be a reason for that, Terry. But Eric, before we let you get out of here,
yes.
Obviously behind the scenes here, we tie you to the desk every Friday, mostly. Sometimes we let you get out of here, but in fact, you know what, let's just dive right in. What do you got coming up? You mentioned the Take Up. Share that with us, and then we'll let you get back to the other side of the screen.
Well, the Take Up today is actually kind of on these topics a little bit. Today it's episode 196, and I'm going to talk about the mistakes that we keep making as embroiderers. So if you go over to erichcampbell.com, that's the best place to find it. It's easy to get there from YouTube. If you're on Facebook right now, you can look up my name and you'll find me. But erichcampbell.com will get you to either all of my socials. And if we go to the Take Up bar, at the top bar, there's a Take Up link. That gets you to the playlist for all of my shows, including the lives that are going to go on today at 2:30 Mountain Daylight Time. Thank you, Terry, for always reminding us. I will be on live talking about like the mistakes that we always make, that we keep making. And that's the thing is like there are perennial mistakes that digitizers keep making that I want to help you avoid. This is me helping you avoid the brick wall, as we said previously. But go to erichcampbell.com. Also, I don't always get back to people quickly, but I try to get back to everybody if I can. Leave me a question. If you got questions that we didn't get to answer here, if you want me to tell you more about who's got what classes and what classes I have or what shows that I have, by all means, jump over there and let me know.
Awesome.
Check it out. Awesome.
Well,
all right.
Thanks so much, Eric, for sitting on both sides of the in the green room and in the
I tried to finish quicker.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't make it, but I tried to finish quicker.
Yeah, you did very good.
Right.
Very good. Thank you, Eric.
Awesome.
I will see myself to the green room. And
yes,
we'll
see yourself out, please.
Awesome, folks.
Well,
right.
Aaron, I have coming up
Yes.
my complete screen printing business course. I'm going to be in Chicago, right around the corner at Atlas Screen Supply, August 3rd and 4th. I'll be at Workhorse Products in Phoenix. That's August 24th and 25th. So August in Phoenix, drink lots of water. It's a dry heat. I'll be talking DTG and DTF printing at Impressions Expo in Fort Worth. That is October 24th through 26th. I will be in the Equipment Zone booth at Printing United in Las Vegas, September 10th through 12th. And of course, Aaron, you and I are going to be doing our show, recording our show live right there on the show floor.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find all my upcoming events at terrycombs.com. How about you, Aaron?
Yeah, so I've got a new masterclass that I'm doing with a mentor of mine that I'm really excited about. If you're somebody who's tired of wasting time with people who will never buy, people who are only interested in a low price, people who continue to demand more and more after they've already gotten a price concession from you. We're going to do a masterclass in only 4 hours or less. We will help you develop the tools you need to attract the customers you desire, and most importantly, the profits you deserve. So to make this class something where we can do it in the 4 hours and get everybody what they need, we're limiting it to only 6 slots. It's a Zoom class. It's an online master class. It's called Achieve Greater Profits with Fewer Sales. And you can reserve your spot, become one of the folks that gets to have this master class, oursuccessgroup.com/greater-profits. Another program that I'm really proud of is an online program called Breaking Barriers. So if you're not where you want to be with your business or your personal life, there is likely a limiting belief holding you back. It took me many, many, many years to realize this, and boy, is it freeing once you understand this. So the program is going to help you identify and rewrite your limiting beliefs. Right now, it's a $47 investment, worth way more than that, but we just want to make sure we get it out to enough people. That introductory price will be over at the end of this month. So go to osg.link/unlock to get in on that introductory price. Once you're signed up for it, it's yours for life. You can go back into it anytime you need. It's a really, really helpful tool that I personally use myself all the time as well. So, and then last but not least, just invite you guys to join us over in our Facebook group. It is facebook.com/groups/fall-in-love-OSG. It's somewhere as a business owner, you want to be in this group. There's lots of great perspective questions and discussions about more than just surface level stuff, right? I'm cool with the surface level stuff, but does it really matter if you like pineapple on your pizza or not? We can still be friends, right? So come get a little more depth over there at Fall in Love OSG. So check that out. All right.
I think the more appropriate example would be ranch or blue cheese, but go ahead.
Let's see, I'm not sure if we can. No, we can still be friends. We've been friends for 20 plus years. So
yeah,
I think we can disagree on that. I just feel bad for you, really, Terry.
Well, hey, in the read-only version of StreamYard, I can't tell if Dane is here or not.
Dane is here. He's been patiently waiting, busy as he is, but he's ready to deliver some delicious Cajun-style secret sauce. So, Eric, whenever you're ready.
Hey everybody, Dane Clement here with Stalls. What I'm going to do really quick today is just kind of show an alternative to Photoshop. I know my last videos, I'm a Photoshop guy. I love Photoshop and I hate Adobe. So there you go. So if you hate Adobe as well and hate paying $50 whatever it is dollars a month for that subscription, they do have rock solid alternatives. Now they're all not exactly Photoshop, but some are really, really close. And my favorite is Affinity Photo. So what I want to do is go ahead and show how that works. Now, let's see. Do I need to present my screen or did I do it already? Somebody in the background there is going to have to tell me because I don't have any buttons. So hopefully you guys can see my screen now, right? This is Photoshop. And this is the default workspace, right? So I'm just going to Essentials workspace. That's the one I like. But I customize it. I do change it. So really quick, I'm going to kind of walk through what Photoshop's interface looks like, and then we'll do a Affinity Photo interface as well. So over here on the left-hand side is all your tools, right? So when you click on a tool, if you notice this top bar, it's called the options bar. That changes. And what that means is everything, any tool that I select on the left, I can adjust and control that tool here up at the top in the options bar. So knowing that, right, just click a tool and this is what you can do with it, right? So before I touch anything else, let's go ahead and go into Affinity Photo. And this is sort of the same thing, right? This is what I think, this is my favorite alternative to Photoshop. I think it's rock solid. I know it's rock solid because I've been using it or, teaching on it a little bit. I don't use it every day. I mean, I'm using all kind of stuff these days, but I do it. I can get anything I need to get done in my daily job that I did in Photoshop for 30 years. I can do in here, except the AI piece of it, right? That new component is not in there. But of course, that's the part that everybody's pissed off at Photoshop for, or Adobe for, right? So over here on the left-hand side, if you see the tools, they're cooler looking because they're color, and I'm a color guy. So if you click on a tool here, same thing. You got an options bar going across the top that allows you to control what that tool does, right? That's all that's telling you. So what I'm going to do before I touch the interface, because I'm going to really quickly show you how to create a new file. So if I go into File, New, right? I'll get this window here, and I'm in Affinity Photo, as you can see here. So, and this is very similar. So I can click on these things. I can, choose a web. I always go to print. But typically, I'm going to go ahead and create my own, right? So at the bottom of this thing, I click on the layout, and I go to 14 inches by 14 inches at 300 DPI. I want to make sure I click this color button as well here, and I want to use RGB. I like to use Adobe RGB 1998, but a lot of times I'll use the sRGB just depending on what I'm doing and what the job's going to be for, right? And then, that's a high-res file, so I can do anything I want. I always check my transparent background, and then I go ahead and click Create. And here I am, right? So let's do the same thing in Photoshop. I'm going to jump over to Photoshop. I'm going to File, New, and the same sort of thing, right? So across the top hand, you got you save stuff, photos, print, art, illustration, web stuff, same things as an Affinity Photo. I'm going to go to my print stuff. Here's the typical ones, right? It's letter, legal, tabloid, that sort of thing. But I'm going to ignore all that stuff. You don't need to. Once you create it, you can save it in there, and you just go to your save stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and go to inches here, and I'm going to make mine 14 by 14, right? 300 pixels per inch, RGB color. I don't like white on my background. I want a transparent background always, 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 because it just saves me a step of, kind of a headache work later on. So I'm going to do that, and I hit Create, and there it is, right? So I have transparent pixels here, and I go back to Affinity Photo, and I have transparent pixels here. And you can see that by those gray and white checkers. It's very similar. And that's kind of what I want to show you. I just want to show the similarities really quickly in these two. So I'm going to go back to Photoshop here, and I'm going to set up this interface the way I like it, right? So if I go like I showed you, I'm going to go to Windows, Workspace, and this is my Essentials default. I like my layers in there. I like my color always available to me. But this whole panel, if I was going to use a lot of the AI stuff, the generative fill things, I would leave the adjustments. Properties panel open, but I'm going to shut it for now because most times I keep it closed anyway. And this is it. This is what I like. I like my layers handy, and I like my color wheel handy. Right at the bottom, when I want an adjustment layer, I got all that stuff sitting here, so I can just quickly grab it there. I could always add the adjustment panel in there if I wanted to. So basically, this is the interface that I use all the time, right? So I'm going to go right back to Affinity Photo, and this is, a similar thing, right? So I go to Window, and I come down to Studio, right? This Studio here is on the right-hand side. I got my layers there. I got my navigation panel. I don't use any of this stuff in here, so I'm going to kind of pull this out, right? Just like Photoshop, and go ahead and delete it. So now I'm going to click on the color at the top. So I got my color wheel, my layers, and look at the bottom here. I got my adjustment stuff if I wanted it, just like Photoshop. I'm going to do like that just to center. That was Command or Control 0, by the way. It will center everything on your screen. So right now, if I had to do something, I would be ready to go. So my interface looks the same. It operates almost the same. Like most of the shortcuts, almost all the shortcuts are exactly the same. That sort of thing right out of the gate. Right? You can customize those things as well. But let's just do something really quick. So if I want to change the color of this yellow car, right? What I would do is come down here, and I would go to my adjustments levels here. And I'm going to go to HSL, right? And that's my hue, saturation, and lightness. So if I want to change just the yellow in here, which is what I want to do, I'm going to click on my yellow button, right? Like if I was going to change any of the other colors, which might, they're not, obviously this is a really yellow car. So I'm going to click on yellow. You can see it focuses in on that family of color. And I'm just going to move it to find something that I like, right? So if I'm looking for a red car or something, maybe I'm doing that. I can saturate it up a little bit more, desaturate it, whatever you want to do. Just go ahead and leave it. Now, I can just go ahead and X this window out, or I can merge that adjustment into my original. For those of you that like to work non-destructively, then just go ahead and X out the window, and you can see the adjustment layer stays above the art layer, right? I like to merge them personally, but there you go. Just like Photoshop, you can work on your original, or you can go ahead and keep it non-destructive. Going to Photoshop here, right? Let's go ahead and pull that same car up. I can do it the same way. I can do like this and go to hue saturation, and I'll get my window, right? Now right here, I'm going to tell Photoshop to focus on my yellows. I kind of like my little dots and stuff on the other side of this. Think it's cooler. And again, I can change my color just like that. I told Photoshop focus on the yellows. Just give me that. And there I go, right? So I can go ahead and click out of that. And again, it's sitting right on top of my original non-destructively. If you want to know more, I will have a handout that you guys can download for free. Go to daneclement.com. And it'll be there. It's not there right now. I got to put it up there. I haven't had a chance. I'm super mega busy right now, but I will get it up today. Or shoot me an email, dane@daneclement.com, and I'll email it to you. Right. So either one, it's there, it's free, and it's ready to go. So that's all I got today. I hope it shows you that you don't have to be stuck with Photoshop, although it is awesome. I just wish Adobe was awesome. So there you go. Thanks.
All right. Free downloads, and Adobe is not awesome.
Photoshop is awesome. Adobe, not so much. All right. He was very clear about that. I love that. Again, we love Dan. We appreciate him being our official art guy. And I know he's super busy. So just getting over here and spending the time with us, really value that. Thank you, Dane. The other thing I love about Dane is he's going to tell it to you straight. I mean, there's no sugarcoating from Dane in a good way, right? Like, okay, yeah, Photoshop, but there's an alternative. So what are we going to do, right? Adobe's made some questionable decisions lately that he's talked about and shared with us. So thank you very much, Dane. Appreciate you being here. All right, Terry. Well, I think we've done it. What a great show. Appreciate Erich and all of his information. Not only just all the button pushing that he does, Terry, but man, I actually feel like I know something about digitizing now. So I can add that to my 15 minutes of embroidery experience. I have an hour of Erich training that goes on my resume now.
Exactly right. Hey, I'm coming right behind you because I learned stuff today too. So, and as always, Erich, thanks for all your producer work as well. Yep.
Terry, next week, I've got a friend of mine here, Amanda Hyder. She's going to be joining us to discuss incorporating retreats into your business plan. She's someone who helps support retreats, travel agent really by trade, but it's going to be a really cool conversation, Terry. I think we get a chance to kind of look at a different side of our businesses. And, and you remember when we had Pete Loveless on, right? And you remember him at ThreadX, right? One of the slides he showed was taking his whole company to, I think it was Cancun, but anyhow, Amanda's going to give us some great information about just kind of rethinking how we look at this.
I love it. And I've certainly worked at companies in the past that would do management retreats, things like that. So I'm anxious to hear what Amanda has to tell us. So until then, I'm Terry Combs. He's Aaron Montgomery.
And that was the Two Regular Guys.
Here we go. We're out. Awesome.
Thank you for listening to Two Regular Guys. Check out our website at tworegularguys.com. That's the number 2, regularguys.com. You can also interact with us over at our Facebook page, facebook.com/tworegularguys, or send us a tweet, twitter.com/tworegularguys. And we have a YouTube page. You can find all that from our website, tworegularguys.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to spending some time with you again next week.